Welcome to the Arcfluence Podcast, where we talk about how design impacts the way we live, work, and invest. I'm Nick Caracan, your host, and as always, my two co-hosts, Paul Fatkins and Nino Samradic. All right, guys, today we have a special guest, Ryan Mainwaring, and he's a client of Arcfluence's. We've done an interesting project, and we're going to talk about affordable housing. Before we get into it, how you guys doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Sunday morning, beautiful. No complaints.
I see you're wearing your Formula One.
I know. I'm not hopeful for Mercedes today, but you know, I'm representing.
Hey, Hamilton did amazing on the sprint, didn't he?
He did pretty good.
Yeah.
It was an odd qualifying and a good race.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And Ryan, if you don't know what you're talking about,
No, I'm aware of Formula
Okay.
One.
Right.
Just
Oh,
from the
good.
what was the series on it?
Drive to Survive,
Yeah.
Netflix.
Yeah.
There's a lot more
Are they-
interest in the States now because of that.
Are they doing a new season for that?
Every year they've done a new season.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
it's always the previous year. So right before the season they release
Because
it.
they're recording.
Yeah, and then you can catch up
Yeah.
on the last season. But it's like if you were following it, you already saw it.
Right.
So
in addition to design and investing, we also talk about TV shows and Formula One.
Yep.
All right, well, today we're talking about affordable housing. This is a really cool topic because it covers a lot of different passions of mine, not just architecture and design, but we're also, we have our master's degrees in urban planning. Nino, did you get urban planning?
Yeah, I went
Okay.
to the
Yeah.
CADC, but then switched back to architecture.
And I love how cities develop both organically and by design, right? And in doing that, you've seen it all over the country where we have these clusters of housing that some of them work out and some of them don't work out. Mm-hmm. And living in New York City, I've seen, a building or a city block have every possible amenity as possible with every walk of life as possible, and it works. And I've also seen, dying cities where certain sections of them are dying because they're neglected and they're not designed properly. And I think there's a lot of opportunity today to create a better community by weaving in these programs that Columbus is now starting to offer that involves affordable housing. It's also a great opportunity for investors. So let's get into it. Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit about the project, a little bit about yourself, and get us started on this journey.
Okay, so I started, and thank you, Nick, for having me. First off, I'm excited to be here with Arcfluence in general. I started investing in real estate in 2016. We're up to 10 to 12. We'll be at 13 units after this triplex we're going to talk about today is done. We have a mixture of short-term, long-term rentals in general. And so we currently have some that are in the HUD housing Section 8. But this one, the project we're talking about today, is a triplex for affordable housing. It's under the company name of a laneway, which actually leads into how to build communities to where they are close together. I don't know if anyone knows what a laneway is. It's a European architectural design where basically you have housing on each side of a street and they all work together. So, the idea of this is how do you build a sense of community?
Great. And you're doing all this while you have a job, a W-2 job.
That's right. And young kids, a 7 and 4-year-old.
So it is possible, you guys.
Yeah. It is, with the help of friends and family and a great wife that's supporting me.
How did we meet?
That's a good question, Nick. So I believe we met at Coin.
Yes, Central Ohio Investors Network, the largest meetup in Columbus, Ohio.
Is it really?
It's the largest free meetup in Columbus, Ohio.
for investors of Central Ohio.
Exactly.
No, I remember seeing you and Sarah speak at Coin when Jim and the others were still running Coin. So
Yep.
you're a speaker there talking about your journey from New York. I think you had a couple short-term rentals at that time. And then later...
How many years ago was that?
That had to be more than 4 or 5. Somewhere in that time frame, I believe. And then at some point during Coin, I got to know Nate Roddick, I think.
Yep.
And we went to do a spotlight, and you were running Coin at that time. And so you reached out to me about a member spotlight in 2021.
Right. COVID, or the wake of COVID.
Yep.
I took over, and we had you on because we were really just kind of starting your project. It was kind of the infancy of it, and I thought it was a really cool thing. I think your passion about, what you want to do with your portfolio really kind of got my attention too. So you kind of have a unique perspective. You're not just out trying to make tons and tons of money. You really want to make an impact on the community and make a difference. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yep. So yeah, there's two. So the real estate journey started back in like 2016 as a way to financially retire early. The FIRE movement kind of idea, and started getting into flips and rentals at that time. Fast forward to 2024. We'll be around 10 to 15 properties by the end of this triplex. I think it'll be technically 13. Some are all ours, some are partnerships, right? But to kind of elaborate on what Nick's saying there is a piece of our portfolio is profit driven, and most of our stuff will make money at the end of the day, even affordable. But a portion of our portfolio is provided to people who are in need, such as Section 8 HUD housing, and then affordable rents. And we also have some group housing, which is for people who need assistance and they're older, right? But you can still provide to the community, do something good, and still make sure you're whole as an investor. That's the beauty of real estate, is you're providing something that's helping them out, but you're also able to make some money on the back end. Not as much as some of the other portfolio, but that's when you take a portfolio architecture, a portion of it is this, and allows you to do these other things like this project, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the numbers towards the end here, or when we get, in a minute here. But I got to say, when we were talking about the numbers for these units, if you're in the right place, I mean, we're not going to build, in Upper Arlington necessarily, but if we're in the right place, it really does make a whole lot of sense. And there's times restrictions on it, right? You're not held to that forever.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about the project. What was your inspiration? How'd you find the lot? And what does it look like?
Okay. So this project started when I bought another asset in Franklinton. So I bought a house and it came with a lot. And I think we bought it in 18 or 19, somewhere in there. We rehabbed that current house to do as a short-term, long-term kind of play. And eventually what happened is a couple years I was slowing down on, building the portfolio. I had some time and I was like, hey, I'm going to go down the journey of building something, split the lot off and build it. So in 2020, 2021-ish time, I started looking into talking to people who've done this before, like, what do I need to first do? Well, the first step was just figuring out what is it zoned. So that was an interesting process, trying to figure out the zones and what could I build is essentially the question, like how high could I go, or how much density.
So when you originally bought the lot, you weren't necessarily thinking of splitting it or anything. You just kind of got like this bonus lot next to the house that you bought.
Right.
So really it wasn't something you sought.
Nope.
But then later you're like, well, why not develop it? Why not invest and put something back instead of leaving it just this empty space?
Yeah. And I think it was a little bit of like I had time. And so I had time I wanted to do another project, a challenge, do something new. But also real estate prices had gone up and assets were becoming more expensive. And I had this lot free and clear, which was a big edge up to like, hey, I can actually potentially do something here. So we went down that path. So yeah, no plans at all. Went down the split and just started talking to others of, hey, what's the process? How do I figure out? So the first thing we started off with is you had to run the numbers. Like, is this worth our time, right? Can this pencil out? And this is 2021, right as COVID's coming. So I'm sure everyone can imagine.
It looked great.
All the numbers look great. And then the process and, how slow I was getting through it, and we'll talk about the timeline. Everything changed. All the numbers flipped on its head. So it became
within a year, right?
Can we even do this project?
Yeah, I had a duplex that I was doing that year, and my budget basically doubled. We had to hold it.
Yeah, you had to eat it. Yeah. So what happened is, bought that single family, came with a lot. Started the process essentially March 2021 of looking in. Got financially it looks like a good play. Okay, let's go down the process of trying to build something. And so that's where yours and I's relationship started to grow, because I talked to you about the Arcfluence in general of being the architect for it, and going down the path of building building this, doing the architectural drawings. But the first thing is we have to go through a bunch of variances, and so.
Good thing Paul's around.
Yeah.
Paul, we had to did you go to the city and actually meet in person?
I don't think at that time. I think Ryan, I think you did most of it, right? Mm-hmm. Because at that point, like you said, you were having conversations with people, but we weren't locked in necessarily at that point.
Right.
I think we came in later to do the plans, and then there was hurdles that we had to still go through with the city where it was some bumpy stuff. That's when I was jumping in.
So basically for our listeners, a variance is something that when it comes to zoning, there's certain rules like setbacks and square footage and limitations on what you can do with your property, height restrictions. And a variance allows us to get a pass on that particular requirement so that we can build what we want to build. And I think your story, Ryan, with the city, like you argued like, hey, I'm doing affordable housing. This is the plan. And you would already
bringing gray to the community. So what are the major variances that you have to go through?
So we had to get the side yard reduced from whatever I can't remember exactly what it was. We had to get the backyard from like 50% down to 25%. We had to get setbacks from the properties next to us. We had to reduce those, ask for a reduction on that.
And actually that triggered us getting a structural engineer involved because of the close proximity to each foundation.
Yep. And then we also had to, the lot size, even though it was zoned all the way up to a fourplex, the lot was too small for the triplex we were building, so I had to get an ask to go, hey, from 7,500 square feet, I think or something like that.
7,500, yeah.
Yeah, down to 28 or whatever my lot size was.
I never...
All parking is off street.
Yeah, parking too. Had to get parking reduced from 6 to 3.
Got it.
Yep.
I was going to say, I never understand that. It's like if you're zoned for unit setup, and then you're like, okay, but I need X per unit, and all these zones are these smaller lots in the city center or near the city center. It's like, it's just not possible. So it's like almost every single time where it's like you have a duplex, a triplex, whatever, you have to go through this variance process, at least for that part of it.
Yeah, I know mostly because zoning was placed God knows what time ago.
Yeah.
And city now is going through all this flexibility and gymnastics to kind of suit, new needs.
Exactly. It's outdated. And it's funny you say that too, because Ryan, have you been getting a lot of letters in the mail from zoning lately, like the last couple weeks? Okay, so I've gotten several letters for various properties that are near corridors, like main corridors of Columbus, and they're like, "Hey, we're revamping the zoning, and this whole street's going to be changing to, I think 7 stories on several of them."
These corridors established in a zoning.
Now that there's no setbacks, there's no parking restrictions, there's height changes.
They're going through the changes. They're trying to respond to the trends, to the possibilities of the city handling stuff and demands. Which
I think it's a great thing. We're going to have more density. We're going to have development. We're going to have a larger tax base and hopefully that won't raise our taxes. It'll just increase the volume.
Yeah,
so we can fix our roads.
Just walking through the city, if you pay attention, you're going to see like all these new developments, and you're going to see people already like jamming into these apartments, and then you see like a first floor empty, which was actually reserved for retails and stuff. So you see the trends that it's housing is in high need, and especially affordable housing, because housing that's going to give you all amenities that you can enjoy from the city is expensive.
But I think that's wonderful. If you have 100 apartments and a percentage of that is affordable housing, you still have the pool, the gym. This is, again, I think that when people are isolated, problems happen in certain areas, right?
Oh, yeah.
We put everyone together and everyone's taking care of something.
It's going to be some adjustments. It's going to take some time. But I think that Ryan mentioned, which was actually beautiful, you always have to actually also think on the returns. So that's why I'm glad to have him here on this podcast, so he can actually not only share share the architectural side of but also the earning side.
100%. And we both taken advantage of tax abatements for just fixing up houses and
Have you received any, like when you do affordable housing, except some exclusions that you get from the zoning as a benefit because you're giving greater good to the community? Have you received any other like benefits or anything from the government or a city?
Yeah, so one of the things, as Nick referenced, the tax abatements. I mean, you get that without doing affordable rents in general. But so once the project's completed, I think it's 15 years now. So
It's some areas it's 15, some areas it's 10.
I think it's 15 in Franklin, 10. And so what that means is, whatever the structure is right now, which is nothing, the addition of the new build is not going to be taxed for 15 years.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So that helps with, like, as you take on a new asset, it helps with that, making sure it's financially stable.
The upfront cost, so you can actually invest into the area.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's interesting too because with the incredible growth of Columbus, we get a tax assessment every 2 years now,
Right.
Oh, really?
and your taxes go up. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. And imagine being locked into your low, unimproved home for 15 years. You can do a renovation, and make your house worth twice as much. You're still paying. Well, not in your neighborhood. You live in a really good neighborhood, so you're not going to qualify. But
but Franklinton area that is actually going now through the big changes. Look at all this gravity project.
And if you rent it out, if you live there, whatever, your taxes are now locked in for probably a majority of the time you're going to have that home, right? So it's a great program. Speaking of which, there's other programs that you're taking advantage of, and I don't know a whole lot about it, but the loan that you got for the construction loan, that is huge.
Is that for this project?
Yes.
Yeah, talk about it.
So the Affordable Housing Trust. So this is another call to Coin. So I went to Coin to speak about going through the lot split process, and in going there, talked to Aaron, right, who is a pretty good developer in town, has done a lot of multifamily stuff, much larger than what I did here. I asked them, hey, so kind of going on the timeline here, this is like 2022 somewhere in there, and rates have gone through the roof. They're no longer 3s and 5s and 6s or 3s and 5s. They're 7s and 8s now, and construction cost is essentially gone from, I think it started off with talking to everyone, I ran with the numbers of like $110 per square foot, are now $170. So like we've almost doubled in price in construction build. So basically I'm sitting, when I come to Coin to talk about this project, I'm basically at the point of lending's too expensive, the project's too expensive, I'm not sure I'm going to do this. So through Aaron, he got me hooked up with Affordable Housing Trust, which is, if you take money from someone, in general, government entities or quasi-government entities is what this is, there's going to be requirements. So that's where the affordable piece comes into this. So I do have requirements that I have to charge. I can only charge a certain amount per unit from them. So I met up with them and talked with them. They had never done anything smaller than, I don't know what size, but this is the first triplex they've ever done. So I'm the smallest project they've ever touched. And what they offered was, hey, we'll finance this for 8 years. 1.5 of it is going to be your construction timeline, and then we'll do 6.5 on the back end. So it's amortized over 25 years or something like that. So my payments look like it's a loan that goes to 25 years, but I have to refi at 8 years. I have to get into another loan product, right? They gave me a 2.5% interest rate.
2.5%.
Yeah.
And last
At that
year,
time,
that's lower than my
insane.
primary house.
Yeah.
Last year
goodness.
I bought a rate down for one of our investment properties to 8.1%, and I bought that down, and he's getting
2.5.
2.5, and you're gonna be good for like a couple of years. You said
8 years. 8 years
My
from
goodness.
the start, and that started in April 2023. That clock started then.
Wow.
huge.
That is a huge. I
So-
mean, my house before COVID is 3.1%,
Right.
2.
I don't know if we're going to see that again.
No, I don't think so. You're gonna
Not,
see it
not
again.
anytime soon.
But it's a good initiative. So you're saying there was like a first property that size, they actually give a like a that kind of opportunity to you.
Yep. Yeah, it just happened to be like, hey, sounds good. I don't know if Aaron said anything. I have no idea if there was any background conversations. But they're like, yeah, we'll give it a try. They were trying to, what they were running into is they had some money in general from the government, right? But they couldn't. Their lending box was too small. So they were trying to figure out, and when you get government funds, at least from my understanding is you've got to use them or they go away, right?
Oh yeah.
So they were trying to expand that box.
And in walk you.
Yeah, and walked me, and I'm like, and it wasn't that much, but it's crazy. Is like, here it is in 2022 is when I'm talking to them, and we close with the loan on April 2023. Rates are going up, and they're like, yeah, 2.5%. Why?
It's a no-brainer.
No brainer for me.
Yeah.
Why them? Why offer that? Like, you could be competitive at 5%. And make money for the government. Like, I was kind of blown away why they were locked in so low. I was like, I'll take it. But
there is a lot of forward-thinking leaders in government,
Yeah.
believe it or not.
Right.
And they really do care about the growth of Columbus. There's a lot of people working
And
very
that's what
hard.
they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
That's your commitment. That's your job.
Right.
So I think that's probably part of it, right?
Yeah,
It's more about the investment into the community, the growth of the community, the development of the community.
Yep.
So is that like a state? You said like a semi-government. Is it like a state agency or it's a federal agency or?
So it's a separate company from the state, right? But it's connected to I call it quasi.
So they have
Quasi,
I think I understand this. They have a contract with the local government with Columbus.
Yeah, or Ohio, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So with that what they offered was, hey, we'll finance up to 85% of your construction.
Yeah.
And we'll give you 2.5%. That's done over 8 years, and the requirement is that we have to charge, I think it's 70% AMI, area medium income. And what that translates to, there's lots of math. I got the document and I looked at it, and I tried to calculate myself and I was way wrong. So basically what that translates into for a 3-bedroom, and this adjusts every year, right? It's going to go up every year with inflation, like the numbers we can charge, right? Is that it says in Franklinton, for a 3-bedroom, we can charge with you, total rent is like $1,700 per unit.
Which, by the way, is fantastic.
Is market rent technically in the area.
Yeah, really?
Well, it's actually slightly low because Franklinton new builds are like they're a 3-bedroom. They do pretty well now. But we can charge up to that is what we want to. But the idea here is, so one of the units will be rented out to the group housing I mentioned before, most likely. So it's someone I've been renting to for a while. They are having challenges with another landlord, and they would like to move some of their people to one of our units. And so these are people who need assistance just because of disabilities or mental issues, right? So that they provide this assistance. So that's again a private company that has government funding, right? That kind of works together. And then the other part, the other 2 units will probably do Section 8 HUD housing. We have a couple duplex. We have a duplex right now that does it, or that we do it with, and it's been a great experience. It's once you get used to it and you understand it, the tenants, the reason we want to do it, one is it's providing housing to people who need it, but 2, they don't change very often. We've had essentially the same tenants in our duplex for 3 or 4 years.
Oh yeah.
Now we've gotten feedback from some people that go in there that they're not kept the best, but the turns are so minimum that you're like, okay, maybe you're not keeping them clean, but overall you're taking care of the property. That's okay.
Yep.
So like it's been a great experience. The government, the Fed provides, our CMHA, Columbus Metro Housing Authority, provides a monthly check, and then the tenant has to pay the other portion. But so we're probably going to do those as affordable rent. Those 2 units, the other 2 units will go to the HUD Section 8.
So what was the like whenever you say like a government, semi-government, there's always like a bureaucracy included, and it's a process that takes time. How long does it actually take? You mentioned when you actually locked in your loan was like
April 2020. Yep.
Yeah. But you almost started the entire process in 22. So how long is that, all this procedure, paperwork, approval?
Yeah. 2021 is when you started thinking about it,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
2021.
So where we're
so
at.
when you engage this semi-government agency, how long tells you, what is the timeline for?
With affordable housing?
Yes.
Just for the loan part of it.
Just for the loan part?
Yeah.
So we engaged them in 2022 just to get, preliminary, right? That was pretty lightweight, to be honest. So they gave us a rate at the end of 2022 and said, you have until April. This rate's good until April, and then you got to execute. You got to start the process. They definitely.
Did they ask you like for floor plans or anything?
Yeah, architectural drawings. They asked. Yeah, they want to see the triplex. So at that point in time, we had the site plan and the drawings were done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we worked on the site plan first for the variances, but then we're like, okay, well, we got to show these elevations. And one of their big pushbacks to us that I recall was we want this to look like it's part of the streetscape, right? So all the other single family houses that are on the street or duplexes, they want that neighborhood feel, right? They don't want to see a big box. They want something that looks like a large home. So I spent a couple of days doing some research and we did some sketches, and we're now like, because of the narrowness of the footprint of the lot, we're gonna have to stack these 3 units, and we're gonna have to make this look like a house. So we have this big porch, and it really does give a. You'd have to look twice.
Are these sketches that I'm seeing? Is that
No,
that's something else?
That's something else.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
It won't be bad if we actually can provide like a link
Okay.
in this podcast and
Danny,
maybe
let's
see
provide a link
this
to the
large-
elevations,
I'll
yeah.
get you that information.
Because
This way they can
image
take a
speaks
peek.
1,000 words. So yeah, it won't
Yeah.
be bad, to kind of see it. Where is that thing located? How it looks like?
You know what? Paul and I were just there. Everything's framed out. Plumbing, electrical's going in.
Nice.
We did a drone video, which we should also put on social media.
We can provide some of those images as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Does this run means that you're gonna start more towards that direction, or there was just like a see how this kind of pilot project and gonna see how it's gonna perform, and then you're gonna decide later on?
That's a good question. So right now, we'll finish this up, and then we'll get it rented. We'll see what the time commitment is with our portfolio. So my wife's helping a lot more with the real estate, but the long terms typically flow to me. So we'll see what the time commitment is on this, and we'll look into next year to see eventually where we want to get, if we want to add more. But like long term, one of my things that I want to do is I want to provide affordable housing, sustainable affordable housing in general. So outside the W-2 job, which might go for the next 5 years, I want to build that on-ramp into real estate of, okay, we got this portfolio, but I'd like to start working with some of the, affordable rental groups in the area and start getting into it full time. So it might not be in the next year, it might be in 5 years that we kind of step more into this. Because there's always going to be in Columbus. Columbus is growing by 1 million plus people over the next 10, 20 years, whatever it is. So it might be a little late to the game, but by then we'll have the time, or I'll have the time to get more involved. So it's a long-term plan, just might not be next year.
Gosh, I really want to just jump into that topic about when is the good time to leave your job to go full time into real estate, but that's another podcast.
That's another podcast. So you mentioning? Sorry, go ahead. No, Rand mentioned it was like you and your wife. You're actually like spearheading this business. That's actually your business. It's like a two people family thing going on.
Yep.
That's
interesting. So going back to the streetscapes, what you're saying, the city, the area commission, and the city of Columbus wanted that. Affordable housing was, hey, as long as they approve it, you have your variances, split off, you have your address, we're good. What you were asking about, going back to that question, they wanted a lot more paperwork. So I've dealt with lenders before, and it's been, it's the same process every time. I had to change my operating agreement of my company, like rewrite the standard template I'd used with my lawyer many times and had to change it. And I was like, so we went through that. That was an interesting process. And when I read it, I'm like, I don't even know what this really says anymore, but it meets their requirements.
I see what you're saying.
That's why we have lawyers.
Yeah, right. So that was very interesting. The process, they asked for more documentation, but that was it. It was really the operating agreement change that was the more required. That was the only really surprise. Everything else was pretty much the same thing. And then I'm trying to think, is there anything else they really asked for? Not off the top of my head. That was it. And the fast forward to the first, going through the draw process with the lender. The first draw was a challenge.
They wanted to see some type of progress, right?
They wanted to see progress, and I'd worked with hard money lenders and private lenders before, and everyone does it differently, but they wanted more documentation. After we got through the first one, the second was a walk in the park. But it was us learning and me learning what they needed to see, while also some of the nuances of our project. So it's been actually, to be honest, for a quasi-government, they've been extremely great to deal with, and so
flexible.
Yeah, I'm a small government kind of person. Let the people figure out the problems and solve them because we're the closest. But this government working with private enterprise with affordable housing, like it looks like it works really well, and they are very they're pleasant to work with. Like I can call them and they'll call me back instead of me putting me on a hotline or something, right? And I know who I'm talking to, and they're understanding and they try to help. Like they're good people, and that's what's kind of nice. They give a good face to the government.
I love that. Well, I do want to pick Paul's brain about some of our construction methods that we went with like those floor trusses and stuff that really, I guess the best way to describe it is, you even told me this the other day, which I love. When I first walked into the space, and I'm going to let you, remember when you told me the story? Was it your father-in-law or?
Yep.
Yeah, what did he say when he walked in the space?
So, excuse me. I don't go to the property very often, so I treat all my assets like I'm an out-of-state investor. So I don't go to stuff very often.
Brilliant.
But my father-in-law had asked. He's in real estate, or has some real estate, some small stuff. And the reason I do stuff where I treat it like an out-of-state investor is because my wife's view of her dad being gone. He was an electrician, and he would be gone on the weekends and nights working on their rentals. So when we started this journey, that was, don't do that. Like
this is the one rule.
Yeah. And she'll admit today,
Speaking
like
about
I just
balance that doesn't exist in Nick's world.
Yeah. So going down that, and so he asked to go to the property. We walk to the property, and they walk in, and the first thing out of my father-in-law and my mother-in-law is, "Wow, this is really big." Like it's like you walk in, and because of, I think it was your idea, Nick. The 9-foot ceilings changed the feel of it completely, because they're like, oh, we thought it would be kind of tight and small. And I mean, some of the bedrooms are smaller. They're what they used to build in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Like they're that size home, right? But those 9 foots changed everything. That was their first thing. And Nick, when Nick and Paul walked in, like, this feels so big, and I was like, I got to call them because they said the exact same thing.
Yeah, so we can only go 35 foot high, and I think that's one of the things they pushed back on. They didn't want us to go above that, so we couldn't ask for more height on the structure. So basically what that means is we have a small footprint. We need to make it feel bigger than what it is. So we're putting in lots of windows to let in lots of natural light.
Nice.
We're raising the ceiling height to 9 foot for every apartment.
Yeah.
And what we did on the base, I call it the basement unit. It's not a basement unit. On the subterranean unit, we recessed that down as little as we had to meet our max height.
Because max height goes from the grade up to the...
So that first floor is actually only, 4 foot down? We have a few stairs that go down in that first unit. So there's still, decent-sized windows. You'll see the ground, but it's not a basement feel.
Right.
So you still have those large windows. You have the
so
egress.
It's a 3-story structure?
Yeah.
And 3 apartments on each of them on separate
That is
level.
correct. Every apartment has its own.
Oh, nice. I see.
Oh, there it is. Paul.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Paul, pull it out.
Yep.
Good.
So, Paul, talk about how we pulled off because with all these utilities and everything.
Aside from the other height issues, right? Because typically in a house you have higher ceilings down low and then a little bit shorter up above, right? So, like Nick said, we wanted to maximize the feeling of the space. So high ceilings in every single floor, right? Every single unit. The other thing was we wanted flexibility to do whatever, anywhere, and not have to worry about how we're doing stuff with, traditional framing where it's like dimensional lumber for your floor joist, stuff like that. So we actually did a truss system to basically span the whole thing. So nothing inside of the space is load bearing.
From wall to wall.
From wall to wall.
Exterior to exterior.
Exterior to exterior.
And now it has the space to run all of our mechanical, electrical, plumbing.
It also was not.
Yeah,
it wasn't I-joist, so it was an actual truss. So you could run whatever in between as you needed. So everything's just running as it needs to. And then they just button it up, and on the floor plan, you can do whatever you want. It doesn't matter because none of it's load bearing.
So now we don't have soffits. We don't have any unique bump outs, and everything is a true 9 foot in each unit.
Because you're running all the installation through the webs. That's good. And plus, I think that these trusses are not that hugely expensive these days in comparison to regular lumber.
Well, no, because lumber's gone up.
I know.
I mean, dimensional lumber's come down now at this point, but when we were having the conversation, it was like a no-brainer. And even now, the cost still, the offset, was well worth it in my opinion.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. But I think, that was one of the unique things. The other challenge on this project was just the fire ratings, right? because you have units that are stacked on top of each other. We had a shaft that connected everything for certain utilities to run through, right? So that each unit could have their own power and access to plumbing and stuff like that. So we had a shaft that was incorporated that also had to be a certain fire rating a certain way. So that was some of the challenges, but more unique to what we were doing.
Do you also have to rate like exterior walls? That's this one that's actually
because we were closer to the property line.
Property line.
We had the exterior walls rated as well.
Not only that, but we had 2 entrances. One exclusive entries to the lowest unit, and then we had another entry that looks like a single family porch that goes up to kind of an entryway that leads to the other 2 units.
Oh, I see.
And
So each unit has separate entrance.
Yep.
But we had to fire rate all those entry points and
Yeah.
the overhangs which is
egress escape. Yeah.
and that's commercial standards. So there's some things on this project that they said, we realize this is residential. You're going to be held to commercial standards on these specific items.
Yeah.
So that was the one with like a 3 bedrooms that they actually
Yeah.
ask you to be treated as a commercial because of the complexity.
The highest special item fire rating wise was the porch. And I'm like, what? They wanted the porch fire rated.
Oh, because it was a part of the egress.
Yeah,
out?
so I had to do research on like, okay, how do you fire resistant build for a porch, an open porch.
I remember that you asking me a question about.
So I was looking out for like California like wildfires and stuff like that, forest fires. Like, how do they provide a rating for an open porch structure? But
because it's an exit passageway.
Yeah.
That's what he's asking in a code.
Well, that and like Nick said, there's a partial submerged unit too, which actually goes down under the porch partially. So it's like when you're coming out of that unit, you're technically coming out underneath the porch above. So they wanted everything to be as fire resistant as it could be.
So I'm guessing you guys having for this partially submerged, you have all these windows, wells, and all this fun stuff. I see what you're saying. Good.
Yeah.
Cool. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Next time, get a bigger lot. It'll be easier.
Right. More the code's changing.
Yeah.
As they go
Code
to update.
is changing. Code
that-
is getting a little bit more strict. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
in
what's
some areas is actually getting a little bit more loose,
Yeah.
like occupant load for a business use.
No, I think we're starting to celebrate density, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
That means
City.
yeah.
Yeah, and overall the lot was 30 foot wide, and the building itself was only 20 feet wide. So, like Nick said, it's very narrow and pretty much stretches all the way back.
So
pretty
the
far
grand
into the lot.
opening is when?
The hope is early July.
Early July
is when it'll be done. Yeah.
I see.
Right now we're in April.
Yep.
Okay, great. Getting pretty excited.
Yeah,
Right.
3 months then.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting, as Nick and I have talked, like we had to go through the variance process and all that, but the cities the consultant came in many years ago to update the code base, right? That's been the talk of, and now they're sending out all this stuff about how they're changing the code and getting feedback, and all the leaders are basically like, we can't have not in my backyard anymore, like approaches. And so it'll be interesting when it comes out next year, I guess when it hits and it's finalized and all that, if what we did wouldn't require variances anymore.
Yeah.
Probably not, but I mean,
But
you're,
still good
you're a
experience.
pioneer, and pioneers pave the way.
Yeah, and the trick with the code is you cannot, even though the new code is coming, that code will not become the law till that day when they actually adopt it. So
Exactly.
everything that happens before of that needs to be by the old code.
I would also argue that the time we had to invest and we worked with you on, I was fascinated by the whole process too, so I was just like, I want to do this with you.
Yeah,
But,
when you like called us the one day and you're like, we're pausing, like the lumber prices have gone up too high, like it's not feasible, blah blah blah. Then Nick called me and I'm like, what? Oh, come on. Yes, I mean it was one of our projects that we were invested in and definitely were excited about.
But I feel like you've learned a ton on this project, and despite all the hurdles that you had to go over, the 2.5% interest rate kind of makes up for it.
Yep. Yeah, on the hurdles, we so the site plan, which is what you use to get your variances approved, right? That's where we asked it. It's been approved 3 different times, because one is we had an initial site plan which was approved back in 2021. Well, when I did the lot split, you don't have to do a survey when you do a site plan. So where the actual existing property is, or the current house was different than what Nick
Yeah, it
and
was
I.
about a foot off.
Yeah, it was
and
about
that
a foot.
happens.
It does. Yep. So we had to go back through the variance process
So
for
we
that one.
referenced the auditor site, and it says it right there. It's
Yep.
not 100%
No,
accurate.
exactly.
And we
So
put that
it's-
on our documents, but
Yeah, but in this very tight,
because
you
of the
have to go through the
circumstances.
survey again. Yeah,
Yep.
it's just best way to do it.
Yep. And then,
Great.
then we did that site. We got it approved in June, and then we had to get it approved again in 2023 for in 20 later on in 2022. We got it approved for a third time because the windows. Remember our elevations on our site plan, the windows changed or moved
just a little bit.
just a little bit, and like you got to get a variance for that.
Well,
Really?
Because originally when we did the initial design for the zoning, we didn't design the interior. We did the shell.
Oh, you just did this shell package.
We did an interior SketchUp, but things.
But then things start moving and
adjust-
adjusting. You have to move the window a little bit. And
I know. I'm like, oh, we can put mechanicals here. Oh, this would make this space bigger, and you get inspired later on, and then we're like, oh.
But could you actually just reapply to a revision of the document, or you have to start a new application process?
No. It's just a revision.
Just a revision.
But
Oh, okay.
but because of the uniqueness of this specific project, they made us go back for an additional variance.
Yep.
So it pinged it back to zoning.
No kidding.
Yeah.
With any variance, when you have your approval, when you go to submit your plans for the permit, you submit based on the approval from zoning.
Yeah.
And it has to, it's like general conformance. It has to have general conformance to what was approved. And technically, there's a little bit of wiggle room. But I mean, it's not a very clear it's up to their
see.
interpretation. So if
I
they
see.
feel it's changed enough, great,
To
you're going back
trigger.
through to get approved again, right?
Go back to the
Yeah.
variance again.
Yeah.
I see.
And this is what I've heard from
Like we've had people where it's like they were approved to have in a garage and they removed the garage, no problem. But it's like, again, like windows for some reason, they're sensitive to elevation stuff. So if you change the windows enough, then all of a sudden
Oh,
they're like,
that's interesting to know.
or like a board and bat to like a horizontal siding. Oh, well, the elevation is different. It's like, all I did was change from board and bat to,
Yep.
Wow.
and they're like, nope, we're not approving it.
Yep.
So,
And this is where the relationship game in real estate comes in. It even comes into play in the government entities. So a buddy of mine who works at one of the professional engineering companies around here, whenever they go to do variances or anything like that, they have a person they hire. He helped stand up the whole Columbus zoning department, and he's shared that they won't have to they avoid some of the hoops that I went through just because we were all learned. It's the relationship. So like it's the conformity you mentioned.
Exactly.
Sometimes they'll flex it for you, and sometimes they'll flex it the other way because they're people at the end of the day. And
Yes.
like it's
Well,
not a cut and dry
relationship
decision.
is the key.
Yep. So you got to
Relationship
treat
is the key.
like always. Even though we've went through this was a third time. I always go with honey versus vinegar because like
Donuts.
donuts. You try to be nice, even though you might be frustrated about it and it's taking time. Like you got to treat everyone with respect because at the end of the day, they could stop the whole thing.
Oh yeah, you're not gonna get anywhere.
Right.
We
So-
have examples when the owners go ballistic towards the city and officials, and they gonna keep sending them inspection on every corner and every turn. It was
Yep.
like that just one moment when you're supposed to pause and think for when they say when you get mad, don't write email to next 24 hours and just wait till this
Oh, yeah.
because otherwise it's just gonna aggravate.
We've had a couple projects in the past where we will copy our clients to any communications with the city, but for whatever reason something would get delayed or it's taking longer than the client would like. The client responds in kind, and then
Create mess.
we're like, I give them a phone call. We're like, we're gonna take care of this. We go down to the city, we hash it out, politely with them.
Exactly.
You have to go that route. If
You have to.
you start pushing on them, they got a million things to do, and they'll just put you right to the back of the line and say, we don't have to do anything.
They're under stuff,
Yeah.
and as Ryan mentioned, they're just humans.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, great. That was pretty great. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have to take a tour of this. Maybe what we do is
I think it'll be that will be actually a good idea to take a tour of that.
Yeah. When is this gonna air, Danny?
Oh gosh, we have about a month.
All right, so this will air in about a month. So let's try to. Well, you're not going to be quite done in a month. Maybe we'll wait till the finished product, and we can do just a.
Yeah.
We can repost
Additional
it.
link. Yeah. Exactly. We'll
yeah,
post
I think
the
we
link.
can post the link afterwards.
That
Yeah.
will be such a cool.
Well, I'm curious. for the two of you who aren't in affordable housing, what is your take on this? Is this something that you'd consider now moving forward, hearing everything that Ryan's been able to do here?
I mean, given the product that's available financially to help the investment, I mean, like Nino said earlier, it's a no-brainer. Why would you not take that product and use it to invest and develop, your community for the benefit of the community?
And I've been looking into the interest rate. I think they're raising it a little bit.
Okay.
But I think this is going to be a program that's going to be available for the next several years.
Yep.
Columbus really wants to do right by housing, and I'm excited for everything that's happening.
And everything starts with the housing. Yep. You know what I'm saying? If you really want to create some big issues in the communities, first you have to create the housing so people can actually be treated as a people. You know what I'm saying? And they can actually afford this and take it almost like an ownership of that. So I see because the firm that I'm working now currently, they have pretty developed a role in affordable housing, and I just see how this is just keep growing. And Ryan mentioned there is other entities and groupations and groups in a city that are actually. Do you maybe just give us a couple of these names that they're involved into the process?
So one of them is the Columbus Metro Housing Authority is is different than most housing authorities.
Shout out to my friends at CMHA.
Yeah. And then I think it's WODA, I think is the other big one. They're an affordable housing developer as well. They'll build stuff, and I believe it goes rent. They'll rent it as well. But those two are kind of that I've been referenced to.
They're spearheading the effort.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to point out, and I'm going to reiterate this. I'm not the type of investor that wants to buy up an entire block. Now, there are some strategies where you can create the comp, and then and listen, there's some advantages to doing that. But I love being in a neighborhood where we have a majority of homeowners because that value is already there. I don't have to create anything. People are taking care of their houses. It's a community. I'm not a big fan of rental developments. I'm a fan of
I mean,
these.
look what actually, even though it's a good cause, this a gravity project that's actually located in Franklinton.
Exactly.
I mean, but apartments there are tiny and super expensive. You almost get
something
opposite to what you initially.
Well, you're also a family man, right? Mm-hmm. Think about it from a young professional standpoint. They have restaurants, coffee shops, pool. It's not a generational housing by any means, but it might be right for young people who want to get into the city, stay for a year or two.
Yeah, but I have a lot of young people in my firm. They cannot afford to live in these apartments, and they have decent. You know what I'm saying? So I think I'm almost more towards the Ryan's approach, and when you really can create something, especially first you respect the scale of the neighborhood, which is I think key. Instead of being these giant blocks that. They have amenities, but in the end, they turn into the luxurious apartments. That's what I'm trying to say.
But all new builds are now being required to have a percentage of affordable housing.
Mm-hmm. So, but I think it's a step in the really right direction, and especially I'm pleased with the fact that they now give the smaller developers, not the big one, that they actually can invest in affordable housing. I think that's a key.
That's an excellent point because these larger developers are not interested in doing a triplex.
No.
And I would love to see more of that. So, and this is giving an opportunity now to.
And that's where it's actually retain that original look of that neighborhood.
I agree.
Yeah.
Aside from the foundation stuff that we had to do too, which was also special to your project. You're also doing something different with the parking too, as well, right? You're not doing a traditional surface back in the parking area.
Yeah.
So I mean, this project, Nick, was a great project to have Ryan as a guest.
Do you remember? So when we went to get the building permit, that started last year in 2023. I think Nick and I had talked, and I talked to my contractor. We thought it was going to take a couple months to get the building permit. That's it, right? We got the drawings. We're ready to go. We have our site plan, and the first thing they ask for is a site compliance plan.
Oh, yes.
Which is a commercial requirement in most cases. Some new builds do require it, depending on what neighborhood you're in. But
especially if you're like in a hardcore of the city, they may ask you for site compliance.
So they asked for that, and we've worked. This is where I think, Paul, you got.
Yeah, this is part of where I stepped in too. Because this was later in the process.
This was last year, yeah. So it was a fun. There was some ups and downs. I think there was times where I had to trade off from. I was the client who I was trying to be polite and trying to like get things moving, but Nick and Paul did a great job of kind of building the relationships with the engineering, the planning department to kind of get things moving along, knowing that they're under a lot of stress and they're understaffed. I think that helped a lot. But part of the site compliance plan is Nick and I talked a lot about this. We were kind of moving into this commercial, and I built a triplex to do residential coding.
Yeah.
Because when you go to
RCO.
fourplex, it goes commercial.
Yeah.
Talk to Nick, talk to GCs. Like everyone said, try to stay below 4 because it gets a lot harder at 4, and there's a lot more requirements. One of them is stormwater, which I actually didn't know what it meant.
Oh, I see.
I had no idea this was a thing. We got pulled into stormwater requirements because the size of the footprint of the property or of the actual building plus the footprint of the sidewalk and the parking pad brought us into a requirement for stormwater.
Like a permeable surface.
Correct.
Well,
Luckily
that
we
was
didn't
what
have.
we found out. At first, we thought I had to go hire an engineer,
yeah.
a civil engineer to do a stormwater plan for me, which I found out was extremely expensive.
Oh, yeah.
and
What was the quote? About 20,000?
it was about 8 to 10 grand.
Okay. Just
And
for the drawing.
just to do the stormwater plan, and the time associated to it was 4 to 5 months for approval.
Oh my God.
So we asked, hey, is there a way to, I don't even know how it came up with the city, but the stormwater engineer said you could do this. And I was like, I just was asking, is there any way we could avoid this? And he's like, well, you could do a permeable surface. And that's where.
And the city of Columbus is very particular with what surfaces you can have for parking.
Right.
So really, there's only like a couple approved surfaces, and that's it.
Concrete, asphalt, and two.
Gravel's not
very
allowed.
Specific permeable pavers.
Yeah.
Like you can't use just any permeable paver.
Right.
Yeah. So it came up. We did a little research. We pulled cut sheets together for it. So and then sent them over and
That's
got everything
excellent
approved.
story. That is
Yeah.
excellent story, actually.
So like I said, Nick, this project has a lot of unique, special characteristics that we had to put in place to get everything over these hurdles.
Small but complicated.
Yeah.
I
Yes,
like
yeah.
it.
So we avoided the stormwater plan completely. So I told the engineer, hey, we don't have to do this anymore.
Good.
and then all we have to do is spend a little extra on the parking
Wow.
pad.
Awesome.
So now that we got this kind of figured out, what's next?
What's next? Finish this off, get it rented, take a break.
That's what you mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
Take a
and
break
then-
and just think.
Yeah, the other thing is like trying to start building some on ramps with affordable companies that are around here. So like Columbus Metro Housing, who I've been kind of talking with since we're also one of their customers. How do I start helping them with some of their initiatives they've got going on while still having my full-time job? So kind of building that on ramp to maybe hopefully long term get an opportunity with them when our financial. Some of our financial stuff changes a little bit more in our favor.
No, I totally get it. And we've actually been meeting for lunch for the last
Couple years.
Has it been that long?
It's got to be. It's got to be at least. I think it's over a year for sure. If not, we're coming
Great.
up to.
Great. Taco Tuesday.
Yep, Taco Tuesday.
But the reason that besides our friendship, I like hearing about you wanting to move the needle for mankind.
Right.
Like it's kind of one of my core values too. Is I want to leave the world better than I found it.
Yep.
And you're set on it. You bring it up a lot more in conversation than I do. So I just love the fact that this is part of your mantra. Your North Star.
So I'll say where this all started was one of my friends who's in IT referenced a book. It's called Happy City. I don't know if you get any of you if you all like urban planning.
I've not heard of it, but I'm definitely going to add it to the list.
So what it is, it's based off how to build cities so people are happy. But it talks a lot about density. It talks a lot about government and private working together. It talks about and why you want people from different, I'll just call it like different income levels. You want them mixing because they'll learn from each other, and someone will move up.
Yeah.
Or you'll give opportunities.
Yeah.
But they talk about how to do it and what cities are doing it. What all comes like to kind of add up talks about how to do public transportation. Like, it's a really great read, but it hits a lot in Europe does a lot of this already, just on how they do it. But what it leads to is you build these communities of different people, different ideas, and they become happier because they're closer together. There's densities, there's shared amenities, there's shared common spaces, and they just generally enjoy life, which leads to
avoid
lower
segregation.
healthcare,
That's
all
really
that.
important.
Like, leads to all these things that we just we'd solve it some other way. But it gets into this. It talks about how you can only do this with government and private working together, because it's not affordable for private to do it alone.
Dare I say it's more of a balanced community?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And like anything, right? You want that diversity there. I mean, like, I'm going to only invest in single family homes and that's it, right? And that's, you forget about stock market and whatever other investment. I'm just doing this.
And
it's
that's
like, no,
what-
you
I
sprinkle
think my-
everything around.
My core understanding and value, also when you look to the histories, is diversity bring the prosperity, and
Absolutely.
and that's a key for a humankind.
Yeah.
Honestly, we really have to work more on ourselves, improving ourselves, not just improving machines to make us lazy and we doing nothing. But it was like, no, honestly, I think that's a core thing. We have to start investing in ourselves, in the humanity.
I agree. Danny, can we put a note in our notes for Happy City and have a link to that?
Yes,
book?
please, to that
Perfect.
book. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna read. That's my next read.
Well, I could keep talking forever, but Brian, I think we're gonna. Is
Yeah.
there any closing words you'd like to say about yourself or anything else to investors out there listening?
No, I think I'd only say is like, so this has been a project that I've had since 2021 that I started, and now it's 2024 and it's still not done. Like, whatever you do, build one bridge at a time. Like, just stay focused on it. Just keep executing. You don't have to have the best plan. I mean, I didn't have the best plan on this. I had some numbers. I didn't really know what I was building, or I had an idea of what I was building, but I just like, hey, I'm going to take one step at a time.
Ooh, so the numbers today, what are they shaping out to be, and are you happy with them?
Yeah, so the numbers are looking really good. So this
Great.
is, I would call this in today's market, this is a unicorn deal. They don't exist.
That means it's really good, you guys. That's a home run.
Yeah, it's a home run. It's probably, this asset in general is hands down the best asset we have. The single family is doing the best we have. And then this, with the lending that we're getting with your guys' help in general, like, I can't say enough about the relationships that we built through this. None of this would be possible to achieve what we're doing. Cause like, I can't go buy a new a rehab property or a fixer upper and get what we're getting out of this. So and what's great is so that's financially it's great for us, but it's also we're able to provide that product to the so we're able to charge, when I talk about these numbers, and it's a home run for us, we're able to charge $1,500 per unit and still make money on this.
Wow,
cash
that's
flow
great.
year one.
That's
So
great.
like that's the beauty of what Affordable Housing Trust, what you guys did for us. Like, I can't say enough about our influence. Like, all this, the relationships made this possible. It wasn't just us or me.
Great story.
I love it.
I love
Yeah,
it too.
we're excited to see it done.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ryan. It was
thank
a
you.
great story.
Yeah, I had
Amazing
fun. Thanks for
story.
coming.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to wrap it up here, but we'll see you in 2 weeks.
This has been the ArcFluence Podcast. As always, you can get more information and additional content on arcfluence.com. Please subscribe on the platform of your choice and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you.